All right, welcome everyone. Any person present who wishes to address the board or raise any questions about public school district matters or governing policies may do so under public participation. No discussion of personnel or individual students is permitted at this time. A limited 3 minutes will be placed on each speaker. Persons who want more time may make arrangements to be placed on a future agenda. As a courtesy, all cell phones should be turned off. The public is also reminded they may provide input on all motions being considered by the board at this meeting. I'm stuck. Just a second. Hooked up on the table. And also, I just want to remind everybody, the school is streaming this on YouTube. Any Facebook streaming is done by people in the audience, and any comments thereof are not sanctioned by the school. So any video other than the YouTube video is just personal video people are doing. And if you have public comment that's going to be on the green plan, I'm going to save that for later. I got one sheet, so we're just going to save that for later. Correspondence, there's a bunch of correspondence in the drive that came with, or it's in the board packet. So I'm not going to go through all that individually. And we're going to just jump into facility reports with Mark.
Nothing to add. Are there any questions?
Are there any questions for Mark from the board? All right. Thank you very much. And superintendent's report.
So I'll go through this fairly quick. Some COVID information in there, including the weekly report from Yellowstone County Unified Health Command. Of note on that, the one that we were worried about last week when we were talking about some of this stuff, the cases per 100,000 is actually in the yellow. There were some additional cases that came in from a lab back in October. They did not add those into the weekly calculation, so it's been at 25, 22, and 24 cases per 100,000 each of the last 3 weeks. The one negative that was an increase, and I think this was more related to the those old tests that came in, is the positivity rate. It jumped from just over 5.5% to almost 13%, but it has to be above that level for 2 weeks before they make any changes from the red to the yellow recommendation at that level. Also included in there is our Lockwood COVID case information. That's updated on a regular basis. I believe we're right at 5 positive cases this month, in February so far. One thing to note on that, as we start looking at the math, about 2.5% of our students have tested positive for COVID. So I think we've done a real good job of keeping that number down with the students. Yellowstone County Health Department also asked that we share a mask study that they'd put together. That's really moot for us because we've extended the mask or face covering mandate as we go forward. And then there's another one on their podcast that I've been following at the recommendation of a doctor, and there's a good thing on there, a good conversation about what we're going to talk about later as far as schools going back to full-time, hybrid, those type of things. But one thing that I want to kind of stress on there is this concerns about transmission, and with the variants that are coming along, you know, it's not as easy as us just saying that we want to jump into the green. We also have to have a plan of what would trigger us back into the yellow if we do make that jump. So that's part of why we did this pretty thorough job on the plans and not just, you know, say we're going to go full-time. A couple of other things. Community Education Department has their second Tough Topic Series session on February 22nd at 6 p.m. That will be virtual, and the focus is on teen drivers. I included the registration link right there in my board packet. I've been working with the county commissioners to try and get the speed limit changed out here on Highway 87. Was able to attend a small breakfast with the new chancellor up at MSUB. She's really looking forward to coming out here, touring the school, and getting a chance to partner with us on some things going forward. Next week is the NCE conference that I usually attend every year. That's the National Superintendent's Conference. I will actually be helping lead a session an EdChat session on mental health needs in rural schools. And in climate, would just like to congratulate Gwen Cusack as being our first speech and debate medalist ever for Lockwood High School. She placed this year at the state speech and debate meet. And then I won't ruin the surprise, but Mr. Erickson was reached out to today by MHSA about possibly hosting another tournament, and I'll let him touch base on that as we move forward. So, any questions from the trustees on my board report? Thanks.
Jay Ellis, this is on the green plan is what you're talking about? Okay. All right, we're going to move into the principal reports. Mrs. Fox.
Hello. Well, just something positive to share. Our little kiddos have been to school 102 days this year, so that's pretty cool. And then I had a really good turnout on my parent survey. I appreciate parents for taking that, and we obviously take the feedback very seriously, and it helps us to make decisions. I had about 188 responses, so that's good. The one I really loved was about 95% of the people that took the survey said that if they need to get a hold of their child's teacher, that communication is really good. It's easy or very easy, so I was proud of that response. So, good job, teachers. And that's about it.
Are there any questions from the board for Mrs. Fox? All right, thank you very much. Mr. Kinsey.
Good evening. How's it going? Yeah, I heard that, buddy. My positive, a couple things. Obviously, our AIM scores have been really improving from fall to winter. That was in the packet. And the second thing is our parent advisory in January, I thought was well attended. I believe we had 8. Correct me if I'm wrong. Had really good discussion on things that are going on and how to improve and some communication that needs to happen. And the parents have been great with that. Any questions about the board report?
And no questions from the board. Thank you, Mr. Kinsey.
Thank you.
Mr. D.
Hello, how's it going? I guess my first positive is I'm back, so this is my first board meeting in a while. It's great to be back. Another one is we had 10 kids participate in math counts last week, so we should have those results back to see if they're moving on to the next level. We also hosted the spelling bee today, the first spelling bee in the auditorium. It was awesome. It was a great atmosphere. We had a girl that was a back-to-back champion, so she'll be competing at the county spelling bee in March sometime. And I have nothing to add to my board report, unless you guys have any questions.
Any questions from the board? Thank you, Mr. D.
Thank you.
And Mr. Klasna.
Good evening. I also want to just reiterate, similar to Mr. Kinsey, we had a great parent advisory committee a few weeks ago. It's nice to have that face-to-face collaboration and feedback and just dialogue about what's going on in the school and suggestions and stuff from the parents. I greatly appreciate them coming. We had, I think, 12 students represented there, so that's a good number of our population there. And then also just the fact that we're working together to make our school the best it can be, so I appreciate the parents coming to that and sharing their comments with me on that and suggestions. Also, the week of the 22nd, our FCCLA is sponsoring a Kindness Week. That's just a national thing that they do through their organization, and so we'll be starting that off on February 22nd, which is great. It works well. Every day we have a kindness challenge in the high school as part of our announcements. And so it's just nice to kind of piggyback on that just that we all need a little more kindness throughout our lives, and so we're going to do the best we can in the high school to do that. So, any questions about anything else on my board report? There might be some people trying to come in the back door thinking they have symphony practice in here tonight, but they're actually across the hall. Just FYI.
Okay, well, that's, we just heard the door. Are there any questions for Mr. Glasna? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Erickson.
All right, well, I never did send in a board report, and I'm glad I didn't because my life has been changing by the minute here with everything that's happening within athletics and Lockwood High School in the last few days. So I just wanted to kind of give you an update on where we're at with the facility and MHSA sanctioned events. So we are very fortunate to have the state girls' first ever wrestling tournament here in Lockwood in a brand new school, which I think is an amazing feat for just this community and to be offered that. That is February 19th and 20th. The next following week, we will host part of the Divisional A basketball. Half of it will be the majority of it will be ran in the Metra, and we will run a Friday and Saturday schedule here, total of 8 games on the February 26th and 27th. The Southern B basketball tournament that's always played in the Metra also reached out to us. They needed a place to play a couple loser out games on March 5th and 6th, so they'll be using our facilities as well for that. And I just a couple hours ago got called from Mark Beckman at the MHSA, and they have to move state Class C, the STAC tournament from Bozeman because they're supposed to be playing at the field house. But they're kind of getting backed up as well, so they've turned them down, and he reached out to our school, and I think we'll find out probably tomorrow if we're fortunate to run our first state first STAC tournament here in Lockwood. So I'm very excited to be able to host those things here. I know when I was hired that you guys had a vision of bringing things in to this community, of why this place was built. So I feel very fortunate in the first year here to be able to offer you so many things that you guys promised the community. So I think that's a special thing.
Mike, do you want to talk about the spectator limits that they'll have in place for those?
Yeah, so with the state girls wrestling, it's an all-class wrestling meet. It's not like A, double A, and B, and C. All 169 contestants, participants will be placed here, and then they all get up to 4 tickets per athlete. So what that does is spreads that out, and it's a max tickets of like 676 tickets that can be given out, but then they're also splitting into 2 sessions. So you're looking at like 300 and some people here, probably at the max if all tickets are sold. At the first session, they'll break up anywhere from the first 4 or 5 weight classes and run those in a session, kick everybody out, and then they'll bring in the heavier weights in and run those matches at that time. So then if you don't make it to Saturday, those parents or spectators cannot come back on Saturday, which eliminates about a third of them. So we're really looking at possibly 350 people in our gym at one time, which we feel like we can do a very good job of keeping them social distance. I've designed it where all of the athletes, the 169 athletes, will be on our running track in certain areas labeled to them, so they will be socially distanced up on top. And what's unique is what MHSA likes is while they're sitting and they call it the cooler area, they'll still be able to watch the wrestling going on down there and still stay away from the spectators in that point. So I think it's going to be an easy one to do. MHSA set a guideline out to run a divisionals or a state meet and maxed it at 500 spectators a team. So we really, as ADs, don't know if 500 spectators, we're going to sell that many tickets anyhow. But if it is, we'll put 500 Hardin fans on this side and 500 Fergus fans on one side of the gym, socially distanced. Immediately after that game, they have to depart, and the other fans coming in for that game will come in. So it's never over 1,000 people at a max in a place that seats 2,500 to 3,000 people with standing room. So I think we can definitely keep it social distanced. Masks obviously are always going to be recommended, that they will be on, and keeping that, and people have been doing a very, very good job of that for the most part. I mean, it's tough sometimes, but we'll continue to fight those battles. So it's really manageable in the sense of it's not running like the old tournaments where we pack the house and have to turn people away. It'll all be managed in that sense. Any questions on tournaments? Yes, so John Felton, I had to, MHSA, with one thing within their insurance, had to have county health sign off and write a letter, and John Felton has sent a letter to MHSA stating that Yellowstone County is okay with each and every one of these events here, so, which was nice, under those guidelines that we came up with. Any questions on tournaments?
Board have any questions on that?
And then I just have a couple things here. Middle school wrestling, just a heads up, middle school wrestling is starting February 22nd. Spring sports is right around the corner, and that will, for track and softball, will start March 15th. Our softball schedule is set at this time, and track schedule is tentatively scheduled, but we're waiting for MHSA guidelines of knowing how many allow at a certain event, so that's really gonna kind of throw a wrench into where we go and what we do. We work alongside Laurel and the Billings schools to host those meets, so we got like 30 or 40 schools with track in our area that we're going to just rotate around 5 venues within our county to get everybody competition if there are a limited number of participants, which we thinking there's going to be probably a limit of 200, they were talking, per track meet. So that'll be a hurdle that we'll have to schedule. Also give you a heads up that the volleyball, and I've talked with the volleyball and basketball coaches, we do plan on, if things progress, we do plan on running either a 4 to 6 week training and games for 4th through 6th graders to give them some sort of competition and training and things like that, and we'll schedule all that and run through protocols within our gymnasiums for our Lockwood kids. So I'm excited about getting them going as well. So, and the last thing I want to tell you is our basketball teams, their coaches have told me that they feel like they're well ahead of where they ever thought they would be at this point. So I thank you for bringing 8th graders on, and I think they're doing a great job. Any questions?
Any other questions from the board?
I would just say, trustees, if you have any reservations or concerns about the tournaments coming up, give me a call and let me know, and we can kind of connect you with Mike and make sure he takes care of any of those concerns that anybody might have.
We will need volunteers.
Thank you. So Darlene, are we okay on streaming up there? Okay. Oh, good. High school update, Mark is not here, I don't believe.
Mark was unable to be here tonight. Kind of the same as we were at last month. We're just kind of checking off those punch list items, kind of working our way through. He and I actually meet every week and go through those things. And what we're going to start doing, starting tomorrow morning, is after we meet, we're going to meet with Langlis's project managers so that we're just eliminating an extra step so we can kind of get those things wrapped up and buttoned up here sooner rather than later.
All right, we're going to move on to trustee reports, which is just consensus bargaining information. So we will do consensus bargaining again with the teachers union later on in the agenda. We will start. We will set that date, and right now we're looking at next Tuesday. So we're going to move on to the items for action. And if there are no objections to the consent agenda, that will pass.
I'll just give a little clarification on there. Those 2 teachers that are already hired, They'll just be teaching an extra class. Mrs. Wolf and Mr. D did a great job of going through and identifying some middle school kids that could use a little boost in math and reading, English. And those teachers volunteered to teach that extra class 0 hours. So we will be adding a 0-hour class. And I think the parents all agreed to transport them as well, too. So it'll be just another way to get another second dose for some of those kids.
All right, so there are no objections? That will pass. Thank you. And we're going to move on to the audit report.
Everybody hear me okay? First off, thanks. I would like to thank, well, I should start with my name. My name is Tony Gerhards. My name is Tony Gerhards. I work for Whiffley LLP. I'm an audit manager, and I completed the audit this year with the help of Lori and her staff. I would like to thank Lori and her staff for all the help. It was a challenging time for both us doing the audit and you guys with COVID and all that stuff, and we really appreciate it. As of right now, the audit is in draft stage. It's in our final review process. We have certain checks and balances that we have to go through to ensure that the audit is correct. Most of the times it's 99% correct. When we get it there, it's just making sure it's that rest of the way there. Hopefully that will be out and be issued by the end of next week, I'm hoping. As of right now, and I'm not foreseeing this changing, the opinion on the audit is unmodified across all opinion units. Those opinion units are the governmental activities, the general fund, miscellaneous, debt service, building, and school food fund. As part of our audit, since you guys receive a certain amount of federal dollars, we were required to look at a certain federal programs. The program that we looked at this year was the school food program. That we did not find any findings or have any issues like that. At this point, I'll open it up to any questions for any of you, anybody or any that have questions about the audit report.
Does anybody on the board have any questions? I guess not.
Thank you.
Thank you. So that being said, I'll entertain a motion to approve the audit.
I move to approve the audit.
Pick up the microphone.
I'll second it.
So it's a motion from Pam and a second from Scott to, I'm sorry, I wrote Pam. Do you believe that? See, I'm all confused because of the mic. It's a motion from Kat and a second from Scott to approve the audit as presented. Is there any questions from the audience? Nothing on our form. Are there any questions from the board? And hearing none, thank you very much. All in favor, say aye. 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 And those opposed? And that motion carries. All right, we're going to go back over the hazard funding just to clarify that information.
So this isn't something that really requires you guys to take action, but there's been some false rumors, some slanderous things being said in the community based on, I guess, maybe just a lack of understanding of school funding. And so I wanted to address it and make sure that it's clear that the board was aware that we switched over the hazard pay that was approved. And if you go back and listen to the YouTube and watch the video of that board meeting, it's very clear that we said that it was going to be the same amount for every employee, whether it was either $500 for a full-time employee or $250 for a part-time employee. It would just be labeled differently, whether it would be hazard pay or pay for extra duties. And that is exactly what we did. What happened is, and I've shared some emails there, on December 7th, the guidance from MTSBA was out that that was approved by the governor's office. We approved the hazard pay on December 8th, and on December 9th, the governor's office reversed course on that approval. And so there was emails going out recommending districts that had already approved it go in and deduct that money out of their employees' next paycheck, those type of things. And we did not feel like that was fair. People had already been aware that they were going to get that extra money, especially our classified people, where $500 takes a lot of hours to add up to that. And so we worked with the governor's office, and we were able to shift around some other acceptable costs. And that's one thing people have to understand about school budgets, that we have many different buckets of money that we can take it out of for different things, and there's different uses available for those type of things. And so we shifted some of the salaries over into that bucket that were approved out of that, to free up the money out of the general fund that went to our staff members for that $500 approval. No one was ever given a single dime more, and trustees were all made aware of this before we went ahead and issued those checks. As a matter of fact, I think almost every one of you reached out to me individually with concern based on the feedback of what was going on with MTSBA and the governor's office. Nobody got an extra dime. This was really just an accounting maneuver to make sure that the money that we were using was acceptable out of that fund, and not something that we would maybe have to pay back to the state, or because we had used hazard pay after it. We'd used it for hazard pay after it had been told that was a change. So, does that make sense to everyone? So all I'm asking for today is for you guys to make a motion, just clarifying that you were aware that the hazard pay that we approved in December ended up coming out of the general fund rather than the CRF, and that we went ahead and shifted some other costs out of the general fund into the CRF that were acceptable.
I'm going to pass.
I move to recognize that we paid hazard pay out of general fund and moved other costs from general fund into the COVID payments.
And I second that. All right, so we have a motion from Pam and a second from Buddy to acknowledge that we paid the hazard pay out of the general fund and moved other funds to account for the difference from the CRF into the general fund. Are there any questions from the audience on this or comments? Please come to the microphone.
So I'm Katie Unrein, and I just was wondering, I think part of the misinformation was, I know I saw something where out of the general fund came like 20,000 to somebody and 15,000 to someone else, and then 6,000 to one principal and 4,000 or something to another principal. I just didn't understand that accounting. So I think what I wanted to know in general, and I had emailed, I think you, I didn't get a response yet though, it was a week or two ago. I was just wondering if our principals and Tobin were able, and Mr. Chrisman, were able to get some of that hazard pay.
So I responded to your email.
You did.
Every single employee, whether they were full-time, anybody that works a full-time schedule received $500. Anybody that works part-time received $250. So what you're talking about was not the general fund accounting. What you're talking about is the CRF accounting.
Okay.
So we shifted part of my salary, my existing salary, because of all the extra time I've been spending on coronavirus, which is acceptable under the guidelines that we were given. We moved $6,000 of each of the principal salaries into the CRF funds to free up, and as well as Mr. Chrisman's. He's our lead guy that goes along with, does all of he's the touchstone for all of our contact tracing to make sure everything is consistent. Yeah. So he's spending well over half of his time probably dealing with coronavirus. So we took all those acceptable salaries out of coronavirus. Nobody got any extra money. We took those out of coronavirus to free up the money that we were already accounted for in the general fund, to free up the $70,000 to offer that $500 bonus
Okay.
to all of our employees, certified and classified.
Okay, that's it. I just didn't understand it from the email, and this clarifies it, so thank you.
Are there any other comments from the audience? Are there any comments or questions from the board? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye. Aye. And those opposed? And that motion carries. All right, now we're getting into this stuff. Revisiting the COVID plan.
Okay. So in 15 years of being a superintendent, I have never written a recommendation nearly this long, and I've probably never written a recommendation where I've waffled this much on it. So I'm going to take this and break it into 3 different parts to try and make it a little bit simpler to understand. Sorry. So I'm going to try and break this into 3 different parts as we go forward, and then just have a little hope/request at the very end. So when we started this beginning of the school year, we set up the COVID plan, knowing that we were probably going to have to make modifications as we went through. Tried to come up with a plan that would serve our needs throughout the entire year. Obviously, things have changed a lot. We've learned a lot more about the virus. There's been a lot more studies done. We've been able to see what other schools have done and what kind of success they've had with it, or lack of success in some cases. And so we have followed the Yellowstone County metrics, the guidance that came out from the Unified County Health Department, which is the 2 main hospitals, Riverstone Health and Yellowstone Emergency Services. And so at the start of the year, they came out with their 4 metrics that they're using for schools. And we utilized those as well, and then they had recommendations based on the CDC, the White House, opening plans for other states that were based on that. And so we have been in the yellow basically the entire year based off of that. I think at this point, we are safe to be a little bit more aggressive with those metrics, and that's the recommendation that I am making tonight. We have for lack of a better term, a COVID task force that we've been meeting as a group, dating all the way back to when this first started in March. And we had a pretty robust conversation about this about a week and a half ago, and went through the whole process and talked about that and opening it up, and we had talked about 2 in the green and those type of things. What we eventually settled on is that as long as the Yellowstone County Healthcare and Public Health metric, now that is one of those, what they call, there's 2 that they call subjective metrics and then 2 measurable metrics. The 2 subjective ones are that one, and that one really boils down to, can the hospitals handle a surge? And so that is judged by their doctors and the hospital community, and then can public health keep up with the demand for contact tracing, notification, those type of things. And so we as a group felt that that was the most important one to have in the green. One, we don't want to be a bad neighbor. If we start seeing an uptick in cases and our hospitals are starting to get overwhelmed, we don't want to help contribute to that. 2, if public health gets overwhelmed, so right now when we have a positive test, we usually find out that afternoon, very worst the next day. Back in October, it was taking almost a week to find out about positive cases. And so we don't want to get into a situation where public health is falling behind and not able to notify people, and people are out there infecting others without knowing that they're infectious. So that is the one metric we feel has to be in the green for us to be open in the green. And again, that just comes back to being a good neighbor with our community health providers. We had conversations back and forth. We talked about changing the metrics that are used by the county. And, you know, I've had people ask me where they came up with those numbers. I don't know. I'm not a public health expert. I'm not a doctor. I don't play one on TV. I didn't spend last night in a Holiday Inn. And so we're leaning on what they've given us as the experts in their area. And we didn't want to change the metrics that they're using, even though I know there's stuff out there that the CDC has that's a little bit different, but they're using multiple metrics and those type of things to combine. So to simplify things, we just said, as long as the Yellowstone County Health and Public Health metric is in the green and none of the other metrics are at the red level, we felt it was safe for us to transition into the green plan. Some of this comes from just what we've learned about the virus, the transmission. You know, we talked about this last month. You know, when this all first started back in March, we were talking about sanitizing playground balls between playground use and nobody using the same pin. There's been no cases traced back to surfaces. This is an airborne virus, and that's what we found out. So those type of things that we've learned makes it more safe for us to be able to open up at this point, in my opinion. There's also articles out there that basically say, and research out there that says that kids are more likely to catch the virus and staff are more likely to catch the virus in the community than they are in the schools. Even in areas where they've reopened schools fully, a lot of times the overall community infection rate runs higher than what the school's infection rate is. So I feel at this point that we can move that way as well. You know, there is also research, and I've sat in on several webinars saying that the 6 feet is not necessarily necessary. I mean, that's fairly, you know, a fairly arbitrary measurement. The one issue with that, if we go less than 6, so right now with Kat and I sitting where we are, if I were to test positive tomorrow, Kat's going to have to quarantine because she's going to be a close contact. And the CDC has not moved off that 6-foot metric as far as determining if someone's a close contact. And the quarantines have been more impactful for schools than actual illnesses. So what happens is you have a positive person and now you have to quarantine an entire classroom or an entire grade level teaching staff. And so when schools have had to shut down, it's usually been because of a very small number of cases, but widespread close contact quarantines. Now, the other good thing that's happened since last fall is they've lowered that quarantine time down from 14 days to 10 days, again, as they've learned more about it. So I will pause there just to see if there's any questions on the metrics from the board. Just of note, the change to those metrics is not just my recommendation, it's also the recommendation of that quote-unquote task force group that we've been working with. And so that is administrators, that is you know, Mark representing his crew, teachers are represented on there, and we had trustees on that as well, too. Questions on the metrics?
I don't have any questions, Tobin, but I do want to let the rest of the board know that I sat in on that 3-hour meeting a week ago where we came up with the plan we're presenting tonight. And I just want you all to know that the amount of time, resources, thought, conversation, Zoom meetings that Tobin has put into making this recommendation to us tonight, I don't know that I've ever seen anybody more prepared to deal with a decision than Tobin has been.
And that was a 1-hour meeting. It just took 3 hours. Okay, let's move on.
Okay, so the second part of this conversation, one other thing I want to make clear on the metrics too is in order to keep consistency for our parents, our students, and our teachers, we will only transition from one plan to another if the metrics are in that area for 2 weeks. So if it just bounces up into the yellow for a week, we're not going to knee-jerk and say, okay, we're going back to 2 days a week this week, and then it drops back down, and okay, now we're back to full-time. I don't want to do that to families. So once there's a pattern of 2 weeks in a row, then we'll start looking at making those transitions, not just knee-jerk on one day. So the first thing I want to talk about is, the next part I want to talk about is the middle school and high school, so our secondary schools. And so if you recall, middle of last month, maybe towards the end, I put out a newsletter talking about kind of the decision-making process and using the data to make that decision. And we've talked last week a little bit at the special meeting we had, but quite honestly, our AIMSweb data for our academic growth is actually very solid, much better than I think any of us expected this year. So our kids are learning under this plan at a pace similar to where they were at last year. But the other part of that data that we did is, and the principals referenced it a little bit earlier, is we did a parent survey. And so this was a Google form that was sent out to our parents, so the parents of our students in our school. And I highlighted a couple of those areas in some of the information I shared. But it was pretty overwhelming that there was a dissatisfaction with the current learning structure for the secondary and middle school and high school kids. One of the answers too was that the vast majority of these parents feel that we have too many safety measures in place. And so based on that feedback, we looked at making a plan to transition those middle and high school kids back into a more structured, more days on campus type of a plan. And one thing you have to remember is we are going to have the opt-out kids. We are going to have those kids that have chose the distance path. So we have to account for that with our teachers to give them time to prepare the lessons for those kids going forward. And so this year we've had the 2 days and 2 days for each group, and then the Fridays where kids can come in and get extra help, and the kids that really need the help can come in on Fridays. The kids that don't need the help don't need to come in on that day. And so what we would like to do, and that's worked so well that we're actually trying to incorporate it into our schedule for next year. What we'd like to do is propose for that is that we go ahead and move to a 4-day schedule in the middle school and high school, with Fridays still being that extra help day, and then that'll also allow teachers to have time to focus on the students that are learning from home. And also with the smaller number of people on campus those days, those kids that are opting out for home, some of those kids do come in on those Fridays to get a little bit of tutoring and a little bit of extra help. The other thing that goes along with that is we'll continue to provide transportation on those Fridays. And then one additional thing is we will make our facilities available to non-school related groups from Lockwood. So right now, groups like AAU Wrestling, Club Volleyball, Little League, Scouts, under our current policy, what we put in place last fall, we're not allowing those type of outside groups to come into the school. Because those groups are our own kids at this point. And again, going back to the concern being down on the surfaces and having to sanitize the surfaces and those type of things, if we do go into the green, that is part of my recommendation as well, that we allow those groups to come back onto campus and utilize the time. Now, we've been working around that with some things like, especially with the high school and middle school kids, open gyms and those kind of things, but AAU and Little League, they have not had the ability to use our facilities. So that's kind of where we're at on the secondary schools. Both options we're talking about tonight would have that same schedule. Sixth grade through 10th grade students would be back on campus 4 days a week, with those Fridays being optional. We would target this to start, based on where the metrics are falling right now, we would target this to start on February 22nd, which is the Monday following President's Day. So next Monday is President's Day, so basically 13 days from now would be that first day of going back to school full-time for those 4 days for those kids. In order to try and facilitate that, I am asking that we go ahead and do a Friday schedule on the 18th, which is next Thursday. One that balances out the days of school for the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday kids next week. So the Monday, Tuesday kids would come Tuesday, the Wednesday, Thursday kids would come Wednesday. We would allow kids to come in and get help on Thursday and Friday, but that'll allow our staff to get in there and start moving extra desks in, all the little things you don't think about to make this transition that we need to get done before we allow the middle and high school kids to come back full bore. So I'll stop there and see if there's any questions on kind of what the plan is for the middle and high school kids. So moving forward, the last one is the elementary school schedule. And again, COVID has been a challenge for everybody. There's no right answers. I sit on webinars with, school districts that are, the largest ones in the nation, and everybody's still trying to sort out what the best plan is. So, like I said before, if anybody tells you they know what they're doing, that's a little bit of hubris. And I'm struggling with this too, because there's a lot of educators that I really, really respect and think very highly of. They're going to kind of fall on a different opinion on this than I am. And moving forward, I hope that we all agree that we're going to move forward and do what's best, whatever the board decides tonight, both as a school and as a community, and support the decision made tonight, because everybody that's going to speak tonight on either side is coming at this trying to do what they believe is best for students. I truly believe that. And the two options we have are option A, and this is actually the option that came out of that task force. This was kind of our original recommendation coming out of that 1 hour meeting that took 4 hours, as Tim just said. And that is to keep our elementary students, K through 5, in status quo with what we've been in the yellow plan. Again, going back to the data, our academic data shows students are learning and progressing academically at a pace similar to last year. So if we can reduce the risk for students and staff and hit the same academic measurements that we traditionally do, we felt that that was a good way to go. And then when you combine that with the parent survey data, which was slightly, I think it was 57 to 43 off the top of my head, that parents supported this situation that we're in right now, that is the recommendation that came forth from our elementary staff. And you saw in the correspondence, there's several folks in the elementary that have recommended that we stay in this current schedule. Will probably be some speakers tonight. I also have public comment that was submitted through the form, the virtual forum that supports that. And again, I respect all those people, and I respect where they're coming from, and I don't want them to think that me having a different recommendation is in any way not respecting where they're coming from and understanding their opinion on this. That was the consensus recommendation of our task force. Tonight, I'm also presenting an option B to you guys as a board to consider. I just have struggled to wrap my head around the fact that having our kids here half as much, if we believe it's safe for them to be on campus, isn't what's best for them. And a lot of that comes down to, and you guys on the board know, you've heard me beat the drum for 9 years now on the social emotional and the other things, the meals and all the extra things that school means to kids beyond just the academic benefits. And that's where my heart really falls, and that's where I would tell you that I come to this recommendation on, is getting those kids active, getting them there to socialize, getting them where they have better access to our counselors and PE teachers and all those type of things. And so in option B, we would actually keep the kindergartners and the early kindergartners in half days. Those two groups of kids have never been on campus for a full day. So I do believe that transition would be more difficult for those kids now rather than in the fall. But the rest of our school, the first grade through fifth grade, my recommendation would be to go back to school from 8 to 3, Monday through Thursday. In order to keep things consistent, we won't have the Wednesday early outs or late ins this year. For consistency's sake, I would like to keep Friday being a half day for those kids. So they would go to school from 8:15 to 11:15 on Friday, and then that Friday afternoon would replace our early outs on Wednesdays. That way, if those younger kids need to be watched by the older kids, they are available for that. It helps kind of coincide some of those schedules for parents. And we're releasing at 11:15 instead of 2 because those teachers still have to do work with the distance learning students as well. So those are my two recommendations for you guys to consider. If we do make this transition with the elementary, that's a little bit even more than the middle school and high school as far as that transition, just because those kids will have to be prepared for it a little bit. That's one of the big concerns you'll hear tonight is the paradigm of shifting from classroom management and those type of things where you have 8 to 15 kids in your class and now you have 16 to 30 kids in a class. Be clear, if we do that, in both plans, there won't be social distancing. And then again, my last plea, I guess, for the community is, and you know, Lockwood has just had such an amazing reputation as a school and as a community. I just really hope that all parties involved, whether they get their way tonight or not, they can move forward, best support each other, our trustees, our educators, our parents, our students, and just really stop tearing each other down in the community and being overly critical. Like I said, I truly trust that everyone here, I mean, you guys as trustees are all volunteers. Nobody's getting a big paycheck for being here on a Tuesday night away from your family. And, you know, we're all trying to do what we believe is best for our students, and including trying to keep our staff safe. We're just all coming from it from a different, little slightly different perspective and trying to make those arguments as we go forward. So with that, I guess we'll open it up. Is there any questions on the elementary side of things?
If the elementary did option B, when would that start? March 8th, okay.
That's the start of our final grading period in the elementary. So that we would, yeah, sorry, I thought I'd said that, but.
All right, so I've thought about this a lot over the weekend, trying to figure out how we're going to do this. So I'm going to go ahead and take comments from the audience. I've got 2 people that filled out public comment sheets first, and I have 1 on the computer. So those I'm going to let go first, and then after the audience, I'm going to let the admin speak, because I know the admin is pretty heartfelt on this. And any teachers and staff, I'm going to consider you part of the audience, okay? And then I'll go to the board for questions and comments. So that being said, I'll let Tobin read the 1 comment we got on the electronic form.
So this was submitted by the 5th grade teaching staff. Dear Mr. Navejo and school board members, with this letter, we 5th grade teachers would like to show our support for continuing with our AM/PM hybrid learning schedule for the remainder of the 2020-21 school year. We feel that this schedule has benefited our students academically, emotionally, and behaviorally. It has also prioritized the health for both the staff and students. This hybrid learning schedule allows for more opportunities to provide one-on-one instruction and increased intervention support. Smaller class sizes have allowed us as teachers to facilitate a healthier classroom community for ourselves and our students' socio-emotional well-being. A significant amount of teachers have been out sick or had to quarantine. This puts a strain on our students' education because though we value our substitutes, they do not provide the same instruction as we, the regular classroom teachers, do. We are concerned that increasing the amount of students confined in our small classrooms will likely increase the number of cases. We are certain that changing this current hybrid learning schedule would significantly disrupt the progress and growth of our students. Establishing a new routine for the last trimester would take time away from valuable learning opportunities. We would spend time reviewing and establishing a whole new set of classroom routines and expectations. The benefits of returning to a full-time schedule after the adjustment period pale in comparison to the growth we are seeing in our students in the current schedule. We humbly share from the perspectives of teachers on the front lines of this pandemic. Our priorities will always be the well-being first and education second of our students. Respectfully, Ingrid Nudenkester, Samantha Heimer, Kelsey Fry, Chase Truscott, Austin Scammon, and Angela Sally.
Okay, so my first sheet is Jen Rice.
Good evening. Dear Lockwood board members and community, we are writing to voice our support for the current AM/PM hybrid learning model for the remainder of the 2020-2021 school year. This model has provided the most support for our young learners during this pandemic, academically, emotionally, and behaviorally. In light of the challenges faced during emergency remote learning in kindergarten, this hybrid learning model affords us more opportunities to provide one-on-one instruction and increased intervention support. The students are also able to foster deeper and more meaningful relationships with their teachers and peers. The disruption of our current hybrid learning model would create a major setback in the growth we are seeing in our students. We hope our board members and community allow us to continue to provide a safe and effective learning environment for our first grade students. We appreciate all of the support you have provided during this unprecedented times. Respectfully, Jennifer Rice, first grade, Randy Plum, first grade, Michael Overturf, first grade, Taylor Bitts, first grade, Crystal Iverson, first grade, Heather Nolan, first and second grade special education, Denise Wolf, kindergarten through second grade intervention, Susan Anderson, kindergarten second intervention, Christine Holland, librarian. Thank you.
Thank you. Jay Ellis?
I stand here as a concerned parent in awe of the complacency I feel that our educators have put on the education of our children. I don't feel that they can get an education 30% of the time. I went to this school as a kid, and it has taught me so much, and I appreciate everything it's done. I feel that this school, when operating at full capacity, can be better than the Billings public schools. When I got to high school, I had found that the assignments I had were things I had done 2 years prior here. So it was very easy for me. Basically, what I'm just saying is I'd like to see our kids go back to school. And I feel that they need that. And that's really all I have to say.
All right, thank you. Is there anyone else from the audience that wants to comment? Anybody from the audience want to comment?
Can't let this die already. Jeremy Brandel. First, I'd like to applaud you all for entertaining this conversation. It seemed like, about 2 months ago, we were here talking about going orange. Now we're talking about going green. I think it's great, so thank you. I guess just a question. If we do go green, kids go back all the time. If they're currently in the hybrid model, could they opt out? And if so, just meaning could they go online? And if so, could they opt back in to come to school full time at some point, say in a month, everything's going well, or the end of the period or whatever? I guess that's all.
So one of the things we've discussed, Jeremy, is when we make a change, that we would allow any families that weren't comfortable with that change to go ahead and opt out. And although we have said that we ask people if they opt out to stay for the entire grading period, I know the principals have had a soft heart and maybe not followed that policy all the time. So when somebody is interested in opting back in, we've gone ahead and worked with them and gotten them back enrolled in school full-time or whatever plan we were on at that time.
Are there any other comments from the audience?
My name is Stephen Rose. I have 2 children that attend here, and I applaud the effort to get us into the green plan. I've watched my children struggle some emotionally and socially, being separated from their friends as much as they have. Tonight, while I was sitting in the back, I just looked up the most recent CDC data. Currently, the cases of death caused by COVID versus the cases of death by pneumonia, COVID's about a fifth. It's a tough line that I understand that you guys are trying to balance between the needs of teachers, the concerns of parents, but our students do need to come first, and they can't get a full education without the assistance and help of other students around them, their friends and their peers, whether that's emotional or educational. So whatever we can do to try to move forward with this plan and facilitate it, I think is going to be the best action for all of us. I don't know every parent here, but I've seen and heard a lot of comments and talked to a lot of people who support the idea that we built this beautiful school. We want our kids to go to it. We want our kids to see each other and get to know each other and build a strong sense of community. I just don't see how it's going to happen if we're not willing to take a little bit more risk. So again, I appreciate the moving forward into the green plan. It's overall, I think, going to be beneficial for our students and our community.
Thank you. Is there anyone else?
Good evening. How are you guys doing tonight? Tobin, I think it's great the way that you have put so much effort into the research on trying to make the best decision possible. I commend your efforts. That's amazing. Again, I would love to see our children go full-time again. I have an only child. He stays at home by himself all day. We have a working family, of course. You know, we can't be there all the time. So I would, appreciate the option to definitely go full-time.
Thank you. Next.
Hi, my name is Sherry Grenine, and my story is kind of the same as the gentleman before me. My daughter is new to school this year. Both of us, my husband and I, work full-time. She's an only child, so 3 days a week she's home alone, and just watching the depression from being isolated is hard to watch. So I would really love to see the kids go back full-time.
All right, thank you.
One thing I want to clarify, because somebody mentioned this building, and the options are only that we're discussing really tonight is really option A or B for grades 1st through 5th. Both of our plans include 6th grade through 10th grade being back on campus 4 days a week with that extra Friday day to come in and get extra help or extra support. So anybody that's wanting to see that more full-time for the middle school and high school, that is included in both options. So I didn't know if I was clear enough on that earlier. So.
All right, is there anyone else? All right, I'm going to go to, yeah.
Thank you. My name is Lynette Brandel, and I just wanted to address the going back to school full-time in the middle school and high school. From a safety perspective, we've mentioned that it would be really difficult to social distance, which is understandable. But would there be protocols such as seating charts so that kids sat next to the same people and kind of those measures to help with contact tracing?
Yeah, I mean, the principals they'll put in place whatever kind of protocols they can to keep the kids as safe as possible. And I know they've got a whole list of things that they're talking about. Rob, are you prepared to kind of talk about some of those things tonight at all? Or sure, if you could go to the mic, that'd be great. But Lynette, I'll be 100% honest. It's going to be a challenge because that 6 foot. So even if we wear, because we will still require masks. But even if you're wearing a mask, if you're within that 6 foot of somebody that tests positive, then you have to quarantine. And, I think our risk of having to quarantine a full grade level or even a full building greatly increases by going to the green plan. But at this point, that risk, I think, is an acceptable risk.
So some of our expectations would be that teachers would turn in seating charts for every period. Kind of as you mentioned, it'd be tough for the same kids to sit by each other every class, just because schedules don't necessarily line up that way. But every single class would have a seating chart, and the teachers turn that into myself and Mrs. Wolf, so we can go back and look at it. As far as like lunch goes, we're able to break that up into two. We expanded our lunchroom, which helps tremendously. It added an extra 80 seats, I think. Oh, you help me. So like around 80 seats or so. And so right now we have our lunch broken up into two sections. So on the first lunch, we have half the kids outside, half the kids eating. Then they switch halfway through, and that's something we'll continue to do in the green model. So we have a lot of things in place. And if there's anything specific, we can talk later, unless anybody else has any questions.
And lockers will be used as well, too. I know that's
Correct, yeah, lockers
something
will
people
be
have asked
used.
about.
Okay, one thing though, with these lockers, you guys. A couple years ago, there was a fire alarm pulled in the Head Start, and it was cold, like this week. And all of the younger kids, K through 5, had to go outside, and guess where their coats were? In their lockers. And it was an actual fire alarm that was pulled, so we didn't know if there was really a fire or not. And so all of the kids went outside, and they weren't dressed for the weather. And so we as a board got lots of emails, calls, phone calls from parents because they couldn't believe that we let the kids go outside in the cold without their coats. We didn't know if it was a real fire or not. So now all of the kids, and the teachers will attest to this, it sucks, they haul their coats with them everywhere because we had concerned parents for the safety of their children. This year, I sit on this board, and we have parents now complaining that their kids refuse to wear their coats because they can't put them in their locker. What happened if today we had a fire drill and all of the kids, because you don't get to stop at your locker at a fire drill, once again wouldn't have their coats? At some point, and I know that it sucks to carry the coats, and the kids don't want to wear their coats, but I feel like sometimes as the school board, we can't ever please all the parents. 2 years ago, or more than 2 years ago, we went through they didn't have their coats. Now we hear all of the parents complaining that their kids have to carry their coats. Yeah.
It's not about the coats. I promise you, it's not about the coats.
Middle
At least
schoolers don't take coats to school anyway
for
most of the time.
most of us, yes. It's about the backpack that weighs more than my child almost, and it's about the boots that she would have to carry, and then if she's in band, an instrument, and everything doesn't fit in the backpack. So now we have to carry everything everywhere. My daughter just today got called to the office because she wanted to opt out of the spelling bee. And she had to grab her backpack, her coat, and everything else that she had just to go to the office to say, I don't want to participate in the spelling bee. My parents know about it. Okay, fine, go back to class. So she lugs her stuff and takes it all the way back to class. So I think it's more about, like, do we have a place for books? Do we have a place for boots? Do we have a place for, all those other things? Then it is coats.
Kat has derailed our discussion.
Well, just-
the locker thing is a separate discussion, and we're not talking about that today.
We're excited about lockers.
And just so you know, when I went here in 9th grade, you couldn't go to your locker, and you had to carry all your stuff, and you couldn't have a backpack, so.
So what it really boils down to with the lockers is a situation where we wanted to be able to spread the desks and those type of things out in the classrooms as much as possible, and we felt like the kids spending their time at their lockers was less of a risk than not being able to spread out a little bit more in the classrooms.
All right, so is there anybody else in the audience that wants to speak? All right, quickly.
I'm Jamie. I just wanted to say, I heard, the teachers and stuff, and I'm glad that we're looking at going into green. I have 3 daughters that is in the K through 5, and I know that they've been asking, when do they go back to school? I hear the teachers, and I respect the teachers. But when your 8-year-old daughter comes home and says, Mom, I want to go back to school because I enjoy learning and I want to learn more, and I want encouragement of my teachers and the motivation from my teachers not being at home, rather than being at home and doing their work on their own. It's heartbreaking, especially when you have a daughter who wants to be in school and wants to learn more and want to be with her friends. So as a parent of 3, I do want yes, I do have a son, but he's in middle school, that's a different story. But since we're talking about elementary, I do feel as though that they would benefit more out of going to school full-time rather than half-time. And I do understand that there's, in our advisory meeting, I know behaviors have been going down, but emotional well-being has been going up. So there's not enough counselors in the school, that we have to I've been told that we had to look for outside counselors to meet the needs of our children. So there's a balance, and I feel as though that with our children being at school, it's better for them educationally, and I feel as it's better for them emotionally as well. So it would definitely help, I know for sure, in our family, since we're both work full-time. So thank you.
Thank you. I think we have another one over here.
My name is Tabitha Weber. I have 3 kids also. I'm kind of starting to panic. I was coming here thinking, okay, my 7th grader will go to 4 days, which is fine, but I was thinking my 3rd and 5th will stay the same. I'm panicking that now they're all gonna go green. My 3rd and 5th grader are doing amazing. They're not exhausted, they're not fighting. They enjoy coming to school for those 3 hours. I'm just asking you to not have them go green. I don't know what else I was gonna say. I was just panicking because I didn't hear any other parents backing the teachers or the admin, and I just wanted to know there are parents that want to continue this. There's not enough time right now to readjust, and that's all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Randy Ochinero. I just wanted to come and kind of go along with the last person. I have 3 kids. 2 of them are in K-5. They are doing phenomenal. My middle schooler struggles, but she's a 6th grader, right? All 6th graders struggle anyway. So for middle school and high school to go full time, I also am the varsity volleyball coach. I want those kids in school, but the elementary school, them being able to come home and eat lunch at home. And I realize I'm lucky because I work from home and not everybody has that. So, I mean, there's that. I don't know why I'm so nervous. I've talked to all of you all the time and half these parents know me too. I don't know. But the one thing that I really want to point out is I come from a family of educators. And the one thing the school has not had to do that my aunt and uncle, they both work down in Wyoming, as does my father. They've had to have funerals for staff members who have caught COVID because they have gone, sorry, some of them are my former teachers. So that is just something I think we also need to appreciate, is we have not dealt with that. And that is because you guys played it safe. And as a nurse and someone with a history of a family in education, that means a lot. So thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the audience?
My name is Shannon Long. I'm coming tonight speaking forward. I have a 6th grader and a 4th grader. My 6th grader is doing just fine. My 4th grader is an emotional disaster. The first part of the year went well. We just got his last AIMS scores, and I know it's great to hear that, you know, as a school overall, everybody's doing well, but my son is struggling. And it's really hard. I am actually a special ed teacher for Billings District, School District 2, so I understand where all the educators are coming from. I am also frontline. I am there every day with all of my students. And I just see the decline in my child. He's home alone every day. And I know you guys aren't babysitters. I understand that because I'm early childhood and often feel like I am a babysitter. So I know that's not your responsibility, but his emotional health and well-being right now is more important to me even than his education. And he is, we're not doing well. I'm happy other people's kids are, but my husband and I don't have the opportunity to stay home and be there for them. So this is not a one-size-fits-all. It is what it is, but some kids are really struggling, and this is not working for them.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right, I'm going to cut it off the audience, and I'm going to let the admin speak if they wish.
Wow, that was great. It's great to hear all sides like that because we don't get to hear that a lot. So it's good that parents feel comfortable to get up and talk and tell us how they're feeling and what's going on with their kids. I can only speak as to what I see in my building as a whole and as a system. And going into this, I was one of the people saying, let's go full time. I don't know what we're doing. I don't think this is good for kids. And now I'm 6 months in, and I'm totally reversed on what I think is best for our kids right now. In the primary, we have seen a huge change in behavior for kids, in the attention they're getting from teachers. In some of my classrooms, they are 1 of 6. In my smallest classroom right now, they are 1 of 6. In my largest, they are 1 of 12. So just knowing how much more attention they're getting every day, which I know won't last forever. That's not reality, but it's for right now. And for right now, we're making huge gains that we lost last March, especially for those kindergartners. You know, imagine having a kindergartner last year and having to have them do remote learning. That doesn't really work. They're 5. You know, they can't do anything by themselves. So just the gains that we've seen academically, the individual instruction that the teachers are able to give, you know, to half the kids at a time. My counselor and I would run about the first month and a half of school on kindergartners, melting down, throwing tantrums, throwing desks, running away, everything like that. And we didn't see any of that this year because the stamina they have for 3 hours is working, and we pack it in. I mean, we get right busy, it's productive, it's purposeful, but most of all, we have a peaceful school. You know, we used to have 120 kids on the playground. Our injuries went from 670 last year to 68. So the data that we have to show that this is working, that's just one thing. Attendance is cut in half. Parents picking up their children early, like coming to check them out, went from 700 and some last year, 737 to less than 100, you know? So there has been a lot of good things. And most of all, our kids are pretty happy every day. They're happy to be 1 of 8 or 1 of 10, 12 at the most. And for this time of the year, to do that transition will be really difficult. It takes about 4 to 6 weeks to train primary kids how to be at school. So now we're not doing that in August, we're gonna do it in March. And we're gonna take all that time to get them back on track, to have a peaceful, safe classroom where everyone is valued again because they have maybe 10 more kids coming in that they don't know. And we're basically gonna start over with a lot of procedures. And we're just so concerned that that will take everything we've gotten academically and just basically throw it away. And we don't want that to happen. So we really are trying to make a good decision for kids because we know what they're doing and we know what they're getting out of everything every day. And it's great things. You would be so proud of them right now. They're doing awesome. That's about it.
Thank you.
I should probably know better than to let her speak first most times, because then I don't look very good coming after that. Anyway, I'm Kelly Kinsey. I'm the 3 through 5 principal, and just a couple things. I shared the data with you. Hopefully everybody got a chance to see that. It was some of the same things that Mrs. Fox was talking about. And it's really great to have all these people here that care. I mean, everybody wants the same thing. Everybody wants our kids to be successful, and just the intricacies of how that's going to be done. So what I default to is my staff, and I trust them. I trust their opinion. I trust their professionalism. I trust that they're going to tell me what they think. And we hire people that all they care about is what's best for kids. Jenny and I's decision is based on a whole school and not just a few individual cases of people. So when my whole staff comes to me and says, we were handed lemons and we made really great lemonade out of this whole thing, and things worked really well and have worked really well, and we figured out a lot of things not to do from this. So, we've had a lot of conversations back and forth on what do I believe. Well, I believe that too. In my gut, in my heart, in my mind, I know that we're on the right track right now, doing half-time for as it is the rest of the year.
All right, thank you. Any of the rest of the admin want to speak, or are you good? All right.
Jenny, before you guys sit down, do you want to go to the mic and maybe talk about some ideas that we've thrown around for families that, like some of the parents we've heard that feel like their kids need to be here all day and are struggling? I know we've talked about some different options, maybe being able to offer some additional things. Do you want to maybe talk about some of those? Because one thing I think that I've stressed and talked about a lot as a district is we truly believe that one size does not fit all. And so we've talked about some ideas that where if we have parents that are really truly struggling, or nobody's able to be home with that child, that we might be able to make some exceptions for those type of kids. Can you guys address that a little bit with some of the planning you've been doing with your staff for those type of things?
Sure. The main thing that we talked about is working with Club, and I know Club's not for everybody, but they do have some more spots open. The second thing that we would do if we had that opportunity of AM PM still is we would have somebody do more of an educational setting opposite AM PM with, it probably wouldn't be a certified teacher, but it would be definitely a para and maybe another person to alleviate some of those people so that kids aren't home alone. The second thing that we do is we do have some more counselors that are coming in and working with kids throughout the day on campus to alleviate them being at home too.
Do you feel like in your building that that's not as big of an issue with the younger students? Is that correct?
I don't want to say that because I don't have the data on that, but we could for sure come up with some ideas. It would just depend on numbers, and how well we could manage that. We have computer labs that aren't being used. We have all our teachers putting all this time into the activities for kids to do opposite that the time they're here. We could definitely put some of those kids in some computer labs for part of that time. 3 hours is too long, but we could use those labs and help them get on the activities that have been assigned to them and maybe do some of those things.
And some extra gym space, and when the weather gets nicer, being outside.
We have space, yeah. We have the blue
I guess
room.
that's the one thing I just want to stress is whatever decision's made tonight, if that decision goes the opposite of what you're hoping, and we do stay with the half, and you are a family where you really need that, or you really feel that your child would benefit from that, reach out to the principals, because we do have some ideas in the works and some things that we can meet your needs. You know, that's, again, one of the things that we really want to take pride in is trying to meet the needs of every one of our kids at whatever level they are. I mean, we're very deeply involved in the multi-tier system of support, and that's exactly what it is. Even with the middle school and high school kids, on the Friday days of being able to get extra help, we want to be able to provide the help for the kids that really need it, and be adaptive to what your needs are. So if that's the choice and our board goes with option A today, and you're a parent that really needs that help, please just reach out to whichever of these principals is working with your child, and we'll find some way to make that work.
All right, I'm going to move on to any comments or questions from the board.
So one of the questions that has popped into my head as I'm hearing this is the transition of the kids having to go from a half day to a full day, and how it's going to be very disruptive. And at some point, these kids are going to have to do that. So whether we do it now to get them back into getting used to going to school full time, or if we wait until the fall and then do it in the fall, these kids are going to have to transition. And so looking at two scenarios, if they're already used to a half day, is it going to be an easier transition to do it now when they're already at school half the time? Or is it going to be an easier transition coming back from the summer where they haven't been at school at all? And I really don't know, because I'm not there with you guys every day at the fall semester. So that's my only question is where is that transition going to be easier? Right now when they're already here half the time, or in the fall to start fresh again?
Do any of my teachers want to answer that question? My answer would be, it's an automatic transition in the fall, and everybody's going to a new classroom, and everybody's getting a new teacher, and everybody's with new kids, and we start that process and procedure all over, and we grow together from that beginning. When we're doing it now, half of the kids are there, and they're learning with this teacher, and they don't know the other half of the kids. And it takes a long time to build that safe classroom community. So we're worried about losing academic instruction time by redoing all those procedures again in March to make sure everybody's safe and valued and respected, and that everyone feels they're getting attention, because that's going to change a lot too. They're not going to get as much attention. And little kids act out when that happens to get attention. And so we're just afraid that we're going to be losing academic instruction time to compensate for redoing that transition piece at this time of the year, when it's not a natural transition time. You know, in middle school and high school, we change classes, and we're used to that all the time. In elementary school, we have the same teacher all year, and we talk at this school about building relationships and how important that is. Well, it's also to build those relationships with each other, with the other kids in the classroom. Do you have anything else?
Oh, that was good.
Thanks. Teachers, was that okay? Is that right?
All right, way to back her up there. Are there any other questions from the board or comments from the board?
I would just make a comment that I think it's important to acknowledge, and I think everyone acknowledges this, that both the educators and our students are very resilient, and that regardless of whatever we do, we're going to be able to make it work as best as we possibly can. I also think, you know, this past year and a half, we've made decisions really looking to the experts and asking, what do you think is the best case scenario? What do you think we should do? And in this case, and especially with the K through 5, we're hearing from both the parents and the educators that they think the best option is to stay at halftime right now. A majority of them are saying that it's in the best interest of the kids to stay half-time. And so I think it's just important for us to, look at the way we've been assessing things and not discount that for any other reason other than we've been smart by doing it that way. And I think that we need to trust ourselves as well and trust those experts around us. It might not be a practitioner, but they're definitely experts. And I will just say for neuroscience purposes, it was so hard to make adjustments. And our kids are smart, but it's not just the instruction, it's not just the peer changes that are happening. I mean, there's just so many different influencers, and we have to be ready to really lose, I would say, 4 weeks. And that's looking, it sounds like, positively. We'd be really having to be comfortable knowing that we're going to lose that 4 weeks of instruction, not 100%, but a good portion of it, because they're going to go through an adjustment. And our teachers are humans, and they're going to go through an adjustment as well, trying to do a new classroom management style. So I just want to put that out there. And it sounds like, Tobin, if we were to do option A, am I understanding that if there were truly students or families that just weren't able to make option A work for them anymore, we would be able to figure out supports for them so that way they get the same level of enrichment as they would as if they were here full time?
Yes, I think we can find a way to make that work. The one caveat, I guess, would be depending on the number. If it was, out of, 400 kids in a school, if it was 300 of them, that would almost result in going back to school full-time, and we wouldn't probably be able to manage that. If it's 10 or 20 kids per grade level, I think we can certainly make that work.
All right, one more quick question, and you guys might have a better answer to this, or you might have a pulse on it too. If that is the case, and we do have families who are like, great, we'd love them to go back full time, do we feel like our staff would be prepared to support that, acknowledging that that is kind of where our families are wanting to go? Have you guys had any conversation about that? Mrs. Fox or Mr. Kelly? Thank you.
I guess for clarification on that, so you're saying if we go back to option B, are we able to make that transition? Or are you saying if we stay in option A, is our staff able to do that? Because what we'd probably have to do is go out and move some paras into that. So it would take away from some of the academic areas, because we'd have to get people to be able to manage those kids during those times. So it's a little bit different answer for which.
So I'm the scenario that option A, let's say we decide, okay, let's keep going forward, also giving parents opportunity to request to have their student full-time at the school. And if we get enough parents who are saying that, and now we have a majority of students who are coming back, would the teachers then be prepared to, just shift and say, okay, we're gonna have to go full-time based on the capacity needs versus this option? It would almost force us into a B.
In that scenario, we would have to come back to the board and have a special board meeting for you guys to change the plan to say that we are going into what would be option B on here.
Okay.
Mr. Kinsey, did you have a comment on that?
Yeah, I mean, like Jenny said, we'll make anything work. And, if we have more people coming back, maybe less online people, we could take online teachers and put them back into classrooms and things. It might shake up things as far as taking kids from each class and giving them to a new teacher. That's a possible scenario. Does that make sense? We'd put maybe more teachers in a grade level so that the class sizes aren't too big. The example is fifth and fourth grade are smaller classrooms. They're a little bit more difficult for social distancing and things like that with 24 to 30 kids in them. So we would try to get an extra section in those, depending on who we had.
All right. Does anybody else in here feel any excitement with what we've learned about this stuff this year? I am absolutely amazed. I shouldn't say that. I think studies have shown forever that smaller class sizes improves discipline and improves learning. We have found out that our kids can learn at a higher level with smaller classes, working half the day. Which one of you out here that has a job, myself included, wouldn't like to have the full day's proficiency and results in half a day? Who wouldn't take that? Right? So maybe it's time we start looking at the whole educational system across the United States and say, tone it down. Why are we forcing the kids to learn this amount in a full day if they can accomplish it in a half a day? Okay, and the other half of the day might be used for AP classes, additional learning, added electives, things like that. I'm sorry, this room is designed for audio to go that way. It's hard to hear you coming this way. Okay, let me finish and you guys can comment. So for me, I see a tremendous opportunity to learn from what we've learned this year and really examine the programs and stuff that we do in the future. Not just this district, but our society. All right? I think we have the best students in the state, maybe in the country, led by some of the best educators that exist anywhere, and they're led by absolutely phenomenal administration. I hope everybody else, or at least most of you, share in that sentiment, because serving this group of people for the last 7 years has been absolutely incredible and rewarding. And I couldn't ask for a better group of people to work with. The effort that Tobin and the administrative staff have put into the research and the meetings and the conferences, it's beyond what any of the rest of us, I think, would want to endure. And for that, I'm totally grateful to all of you. Our society suffers greatly in the mental health realm. There is not enough help out there. Okay? We have to have an awareness of what our needs are in the community, and we need to work together as a community to meet those needs, because it's not coming from the top down, it's not coming from the government. My personal opinion is educationally, it is working. We have success stories of those that are doing very well in half a day and at home the rest of the day for those families that are capable of providing that. We have situations where families can't provide that and they need some help with the child care end of it, the mental health end of it, and the ability for those kids to socialize outside of just in the classroom. We need to address that. My personal feeling at this point is to keep the elementary through 5 at the status quo so they don't have to go through that adjustment, but to find programs and options for those that cannot provide the emotional needs in the home. All right. I did not have any notes, so that was all impromptu. I apologize. I don't think I have anything else to add.
Okay. Is there any other comments or questions from the board? Hey, gotta pick up the microphone, Kat. Sorry. Hey, Kat. Gotta pick up the microphone. Otherwise, I get nasty emails.
Just because I see some faces that got turned off. Joe was talking about K-5. We see the need in the middle school to go more than a half a day. So just Just so that was clear with the responses that were going back and forth. Joe's comments were geared towards the K-5 education, and we have other parents who were concerned. That's not Joe's opinion, I believe, about middle school education.
Correct.
Okay.
My intention on the middle school, high school side of it, it's so ingrained in my mind that we're going back full-time, I wasn't even thinking of that part.
Well, from what I gather at looking at the slides and the reports that we had earlier to look at and listening to people's testimonies, I think it's pretty clear to me that half days and smaller classrooms are easier. It says that in these slides that we have more success. It says that they have purpose, peacefulness, and they're productive. It says that the students feel safe. And it says that the students get more time with the teachers. And it says that the lunchrooms are not stressful and overstimulated. I'm assuming that's not in comparison to what school's like otherwise. I'm hoping that it's always safe, successful, purposeful, productive. But I would just, in my simplicity, I'm thinking, yeah, obviously a classroom of 6 or 12 is easier to manage than 20 or 24. And obviously a child is going to do better behavioral-wise. My experience, too, working with kids a little bit, if I have them for 3 hours versus I have them for 6 hours, it's easier. However, I don't think that's the size of our school district. We don't have classrooms of 6 and 12, and we're not set up unless we're going to, like Joe said, unless we're going to entertain a thought of starting half-day schools. I think it's best we get back on track as to where we've always been and where we need to be.
All right, anyone else on this side?
I was very surprised by the academic results of these kids in K-5 going half days. Was very pleased with it. I would be willing to continue to support the half day if we can provide, with our high schoolers going back on the 22nd of February, if we can provide supervision for the kids who aren't going to have it at home with their older siblings being in school all day. And I love Mrs. Fox's idea about some computer lab stuff, library, maybe some music, gym time. I mean, we've got the wonderful facilities. We could get real creative about how we could get these kids interacting with each other, safely supervised when they're not in the classroom. And maybe expose them to art or dance or things that they wouldn't otherwise get exposed to with a full day of school.
All right, I've been scribbling my notes here this whole time. First of all, I want to acknowledge the staff that wrote letters and put their names on those. I appreciate that a lot. I appreciate people who actually came to the meeting and made comments. I very much appreciate people actually coming to the meeting and make comments. We did have one online comment. Again, it was the staff. And they were willing to put their names on that. This decision, to me, has to be... No, it doesn't work for me. This decision has to be based on facts. The facts of the matter are our kids are learning at a similar path as they were the year before. Our behavior issues are way down, which is great. So I'm hoping all these kids that are missing school and want to go back to school remember that when they come back to school. Our goal for this whole time has been to keep our kids in school for as long as we can, as consistently as we could, without having to shut down. In November, October, November was the highest cases we had. We peaked out in the county. There was no option of coming back then. Come January, we had Christmas that just happened. We didn't know if there was going to be an explosion after Christmas. Is all we ever heard from the medical people, there's going to be a huge explosion from people coming home and visiting and all these things. We didn't see that. It's been continued to go down. So this has really been our first opportunity to come back. This is kind of the date that we shot for when we first started school. We were hoping to be back full-time by March. That's when we were expecting inoculations to start happening and things like that. One of the things before this year, we've always talked attendance matters. Getting the kids in school is what matters. It gets them to graduation. That's kind of where things always are. I struggle sending our older kids back to school and not sending our younger kids back to school. Since June, the studies all over the world have shown the younger kids do not transmit the disease as much as older kids and adults do. I struggle with the facts of what's going on over there. The kids are learning, they're behaving, and I get the 3-hour attention span. So in the reality, in the long term of things, this is probably a reset for education. Education was built way, way back when Henry Ford, I was just watching The Men Who Built America just this afternoon. He built his plant, he started the assembly line, and he established the 8-hour workday. So to help with the 8-hour workday, they said kids should go to school 8 hours, so when they graduate high school, they know how to work an 8-hour day. There's a lot of people who work at home nowadays. There's people who work different shifts. It's not the same world as when Henry Ford started his assembly line. So we need to really rethink our education and how we're doing that. Do we need to have our kids going to school that long every day? Can they go less? Do they need to go more? I totally get the 9-year-old in a 3-hour attention span. That's totally get that. And that's really all of my notes right now. So with that said, I will entertain a motion from the board. Nobody. Yep.
If you just do A and B, both plans include the change to the metrics and the change for the secondary students. The only difference between Plan A and Plan B is the half days at the lower levels.
Okay, I move that we move forward with option A, which will keep the younger students on the same schedule they are now, and we look at what accommodations we can make for it's not part of the motion, but I move we move forward with option A.
A motion from Joe and a second from Sylvia to go with option A of the green plan. Is there any other discussion from the board? Well, we gave everybody an opportunity to put their input in earlier. What's your question? If I don't do it, I'll hear from them.
I guess my question is, as this was all going on, I remember back in the day when Tobin made this matrix of red, yellow, and green, and I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, Tobin, but back then you did say that the teachers and parents and all of us need to be able to move from one matrix to another at any point in time during the school year. Now, is that still, isn't that what you had said in the very beginning?
It is, yeah, that's the intent of the whole process. What we're looking at tonight is changing what the green plan consists of. I think when we first put them in, I don't think we did the best we could at the time, but with everything that we've learned from it, it behooves us to adjust that as needed. But yeah, that's what we've talked about from the get-go, is that we need to be prepared for any of those possible transitions. And I think we are. I think our teachers are more than prepared to go full-time if we need to, with the time to get ready. I think what the argument is right now, and I'm not making that argument, but the argument is that they feel like the current schedule that we're in under the circumstances is what's best for our younger students to stay in.
Tobin, can, the numbers that are recommended for moving from one color plan to another, going from yellow to green, can we have some conversation about what would trigger us back to yellow if we needed to make that transition, and do we have to use the same number?
No, I mean, you wouldn't have to use the same number. The board could set whatever number they wanted. When we had that meeting in the task force, we discussed that a little bit. We talked about moving it up, like cases per 100,000 up to, you know, one of the CDC matrices uses 40 cases per 100,000. And, but the consensus of that group was that those were the numbers set by our local Yellowstone County health officials that know our community, and we didn't feel like really we had the authority or the knowledge base to move those numbers for them. So if you look at the United Health Command information, anything that would push the numbers into the red, so that's 50 or above 25 cases per 100,000, which we're just below at this point, and of course it would have to be there for 2 weeks, or the positivity rate above 10% for 2 weeks in a row. That would trigger us back into the yellow with these changes that we're making tonight. The other one, the capacity of healthcare and public health, that is a subjective one, so they meet every week, and the hospitals say, yes, we can handle more cases, ICUs, ventilators, those type of things, and public health says, yes, we have the appropriate number of contact tracers and those type of things. I'm fairly confident. They were very, I think they were very cautious with moving it into the green. So unless I think we have a major breakout, I think we're pretty safe with that one staying in the green, I would hope. And the thing is, it would take more cases than we had in October to kick that back into the yellow because of all the contact tracers and the additional rooms that were converted into ICU rooms and those type of things. We have a greater capacity in Yellowstone County to handle a surge now than we did in October as well.
Are there any other comments or questions from the board?
Well, I would just like to make this statement that, Tim, you applauded the very fact that the discipline has come down so far. But there again, too, I just hope we don't lose sight of the fact that if we have half the amount of kids for half the amount of time, it should totally be expected that the discipline has come down. Same thing with the other, positive things that we've seen about this. From the get-go, the world has tried to put this phrase upon us, the new norm. And for those, there are some, this is all based on opinion. So for some, they want a new norm. But for many of us, we've never given into that, and we don't receive a new norm. And I don't think next year we're going to have one of 6 and one of 12 in our classrooms. This isn't the new norm, and I hope we don't take the easy way out and give in to what has been and is consistently being imposed upon us through this whole COVID experience. So I'm still for getting back.
It put us together. Because we could go all night, Scott. No, no, I think what I wouldn't want us to do, though, is to become stagnant. And I think new norm can give a connotation that a person is being forced to change. And you can plant a flower in a piece of cement and it'll figure out how to grow through it, or you can put it in a soiled garden and it'll figure out how to grow. And that's because the flower itself is resilient, not because of the environment it's in. And so I wouldn't want to discount the fact that it's not about changing or creating a new norm. It's about recognizing that we are adaptable and that we can embrace change and keep the values that we have as part of who we are and what's made us great.
All right, any other comments or questions from the board? Okay, so we have a motion on the table for, motion by Joe, second by Sylvia, to go with version A of the COVID plan. All in favor, say aye. And those opposed, say nay. Nay. So I need to count. Give me the hands of the ayes. Yeah, I want hands of the ayes. Okay. And the nays are 4. So that does not pass.
I make a motion that we go forward with Plan B.
So we have a motion from Scott and a second from Buddy to go with Plan B of the COVID plan. Are there any other comments or questions from the board?
To clarify, Pam, that would be Monday through Thursday, full days for the elementary, and 8:15 to 11:15 on Fridays, starting on March 8th. And I guess before we vote, I would just ask again that regardless of how this vote goes, that everybody is supportive of everybody moving forward.
All right, so the motion is from Scott, a second from Buddy, to go with Plan B of the COVID plan. All in favor, say aye. Aye. And those opposed? Nay. So I think it was the exact opposite of the last one, so yeah, let's do hands, ayes. And then nays. That way Lori has it correctly. And that motion does pass. All right. We are going to move on to approving the calendar for 2021-2022.
So I would recommend the board approve the attached calendar for the 21-22 school year. There's a couple changes from this year. We'll be starting about the exact same time. We will not take the ACE PIR day off. That usually falls about the third Monday in September. Nor will we take off Martin Luther King Day in January. We will move those 2 PIR days to December 21st and 22nd, so that's similar to the change we made this year. That seemed to work out really well for our staff. It's less of a burden on parents because usually Christmas vacation is starting at that point, so the kids and the parents get 2 additional days of Christmas break. We think it'll be easier to get speakers in and those type of things at that time. The other note on there is, in the past, we have taken Veterans Day off or a day around Veterans Day off. I have that in next year. It would actually be, Veterans Day falls on Thursday. We would have that Friday off to honor our veterans. This year we didn't take it off because it fell on a Wednesday and we weren't really sure which way to go with it. So I will continue to work with Teresa and our paraprofessionals union as well to settle down with the list of blackout and required attendance days. Some of that will depend on what we mentioned earlier, where we may have some of those Friday bonus days in the middle school and high school. There's no need to make those blackout days because we would be able to have flexibility with some of our paras and staff on those days if we needed to. So, any questions on the proposed calendar?
All right, any questions from the audience on the calendar? Any questions, comments, or a motion from the board?
I move that we approve the 2021-22 calendar as presented.
I'll second it.
So it's a motion from Sylvia and a second from Joe to approve the calendar as provided, presented, that's the word I'm looking for. Any other questions from the board? All in favor, say aye. Aye. And those opposed? And that motion carries. Language for the alternative ed director job.
So I just tell you, the attached recommendation is the job description for the alternative education director position that we are going to be hiring for here shortly. It's always good to have a job description before you interview candidates.
So we have a motion from Pam and a second from Joe to approve the alternative education director job description as presented. Are there any comments or questions from the audience, I guess? Jump the gun. Any questions from the board or comments?
Okay, I have just a quick question. So right now it's director/instructor. So just for clarification, for this first few couple of years, it'll be that they are the ones doing the teaching. Once we get to a full-time high school, if we need more positions, do those come in just as instructors, or is that going to maintain director/instructor, or just that director title kind of threw me a little bit?
So what we're looking for, what we have advertised for, is someone with an administrative degree that can oversee the transcripts and those type of things, supervising the teachers. What we've asked for is somebody that also will be able to teach one of the main areas, whether it's math, English, or history, to help out with that. The more flexibility they have, the better, but they will not be the only ones teaching in this department. We may have teachers that teach 5 regular classes and then a couple classes in the alternative ed. We may have some people that come in as part-time people that just teach in the alternative ed. So it's really going to be, a lot of it's going to be dependent on what type of candidates and what kind of people we have that are interested in the position for alternative ed and what that'll look like. If you read in there, one of the things that we've talked about too is not just an alternative ed for like credit recovery and those type of things, but also having that person possibly work with the colleges for the dual credit and those type of things as well too. So really, like you said, though, we want them where they have the flexibility to be the instructor if they need to be. And a lot of times in alternative ed, it's not standing in front of a group and lecturing. It's really just sitting down, you and I, working through some of those type of things. And we want that person that leads it to be able to sit down and be an instructor with our kids, not just be just an administrator. But we also want to have them flexibility to be able to sign off on transcripts and do evaluations of the people underneath them.
Okay, are there any other questions or discussion from the board? So it's motion from Pam, second from Joe to approve the language for the alternative education director. All in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? And that motion carries. Policy updates. So these are policies that change from last session of the mostly.
Tim, sorry, these are actually items that changed because of ballot initiatives in November. And so the 2 big ballot initiatives in November were the legalization of marijuana in Montana for recreational use and some of the concealed carry stuff as far as what is considered school property versus what is considered a school. And so in 3310, if you go through there and take a look at it, this one was changed, and for some reason my spacing is messed up on here. It just basically clarifies in a school building rather than on a property owned or leased by the school. And actually throughout all these, there's a lot of references to illegal drugs. Now, because marijuana is a legal drug, it is taken out and addressed separately, but still banned on campus. So that's the same on the visitor spectator. It clarifies school building rather than school grounds, possessing or consuming any illegal substance or marijuana. Same with 4332, clarifies in a school building rather than on school grounds or marijuana. So those are really all the changes in each of those policies.
These are changes, so we can make a motion and do them all at one time or individually?
Yeah, these are legally required changes, so yeah, we can do one reading.
I second that.
So it's a motion from Pam, a second from Kat, to approve the updates to policy 3310, 4315, 4332, 5223, and 5226. Any questions from the audience? Any questions or comments from the board? All in favor, say aye. Aye. And those opposed? And that motion carries. Okay. So last year, the irrigation election failed due to number of people actually casting votes, not due to not having enough positive votes. So they're rerunning that. I'm sure people have seen the articles in the paper. I think it was on Facebook too. They're blowing out pipes. The school carries 61 votes, I believe. Last year, everyone designated me as the voter and how to vote. So that's all I'm looking for this year.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
How much water does the school use out of the ditch? Because our sprinkler system comes out of, yeah. So now can I make a statement?
All right. So any questions or comments from the audience on this? Mr. Klasna.
I'm going to speak as a Lockwood resident who uses the irrigation. I think we require, as a school, we vote, as members of our community, we vote to support our school. This irrigation is going to be more than just our school. It's going to help the community, and this would be a good way to give back by voting in favor of this irrigation levy. Thank you.
Any other comments from the audience? All right. Any other questions or comments from the board?
I don't have a ditch anymore, but when I did, it was the greenest, most beautiful lawn ever.
Well, I'll make a statement. I might be getting on the bad side of folks tonight, but I hope that we don't vote this from a political purpose, which it must be if we don't use the water out of the ditch. But what? Well, because, well, okay, maybe political is not the right word, but it's, the school doesn't use the water. So why would we want to vote for an increase on people's taxes when we don't use nothing out of it other than to gain favor with certain people in the community? It has nothing to do with us personally. It has to do with people in the community that we want to draw favor to or appease, which maybe is applicable. It's just a statement.
So I did get people reaching out to me asking that, who do want it passed and saying, we have a lot of vote in it, and it's about improving the community and improving the support and improving the infrastructure of Lockwood as a whole. So they would ask that the school board support the community in making it better. Don't quote me because I don't know if this is true or not. A lot of the negativity I've heard towards the irrigation is that the smaller canals aren't upkept. And I wish that the ditch guy was here today, Carl, because what I have been told, and whether this is true or not, is the irrigation ditch, their sole purpose is just to provide irrigation to the 60 and 100-foot canals. It's the residential's responsibility to maintain those smaller ditches. Now, I don't know, that's what I have been told. Carl hasn't confirmed nor not confirmed that for me. I know as a ditch user, we installed an underground ditch so our neighbors couldn't screw with it, which works really well now. But I do think that as building Lockwood as an infrastructure, that this is something that is good for Lockwood. So I would be in favor of us continuing to support it.
Any other comments, questions, or a
One
motion
more.
from the board? Oh,
Huh?
go ahead.
Just for in the future, because the board got approached some years ago by other organizations and basically wanted us to vote or say or just give our approval on things because of the weight that we have, just as, the influence that we have. So, it's fine to do whatever you guys want to do, but I think in the future, if Lockwood School does not use the water out of the ditch, then we should be requested to give up our shares so that we're not used by people to vote one way or the other. I believe the people that use the water should vote on it. But here now, they're getting 61 votes from people that don't use the water. They're using our influence, which is fine, but I'd give up the shares so we don't have to be used as a thing in that. Yeah.
Hello, I'm Coleman Harms. On the issue of the ditch, years ago when it was put in, the area was largely agricultural, and it was very necessary. Through that time to the present, so much of it has become residential, and many people don't have access to use the ditch. The way it works is everybody below the ditch pays taxes for it. There's no way to get around it. In the last 40 years, I've paid for the ditch every year on the taxes and have never received or been able to receive a drop out of it. So I don't know that the school board not using the ditch really should place a vote on it. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, any other questions, comments, or a motion from the board?
I'm not entirely sure, but I do believe that for a Lockwood landowner, either as a private citizen or a school district, law would have to be changed in order to opt out of our vote.
That's something we'll have to look into because I don't know. So, anyway, I'll entertain a motion from the board.
So I attend, not regularly, but fairly regularly, the district meetings that we have once a month in our community. And the irrigation district is just like our water district or our fire district or our school district. It's part of what functions in this community. And they have a huge need. Their equipment and lines are just disintegrating from not being able to get adequate funds to keep them up. I would like to see us cast our 61 votes in favor of the irrigation ditch this time and possibly put a group of Lockwood citizens together that would make it possible for only ditch users to be involved in the vote. I can make that a motion.
Second.
Okay, so I have a motion from Pam and a second from Sylvia to cast our 61 votes for the ditch improvements with looking at a future of changing how we vote. Now, I do have to add, I need you to amend your motion to make one of us the elector, and I can do that, but maybe.
I choose you to be the elector. I move that we support, with our 61 votes, the Lockwood irrigation system and give Tim the authority to vote those votes.
No.
Second.
Okay. Because I'm going to do it in one vote. I don't want to do two, unless you guys feel we need to. Oh, God damn. Yeah. Otherwise, we have to vote the amendment, so, okay. So the motion is from Pam, the second from Sylvia, to allow me to vote the 61 votes for the repairs to the ditch. Are there any other questions or discussion from the board? All right. All in favor say aye. Aye. And those opposed? And there's a nay. Scott is nay. All right.
Well, I just wonder if I mean, we have 3 properties on the ditch. You know, I got personal, you just wonder if a person shouldn't abstain from a vote like that. Because I can use the 61 votes for me or against me, you know what I mean? Just a thought, but I don't know.
And abstain on school votes is the problem, unless you're hiring family.
Oh, yeah, okay.
All right, we're going to move on to call for the election, and that's going to take 2 separate motions. So we're going to need one motion to call for the trustee election and a second motion to have the county do it. So is there any comments or questions from the audience? Okay, seeing none, I'll take comments, questions, or motions from the board.
Move to accept the school election calendar for the 2021 election.
Call for election.
Oh. So I move to call for election.
All right, so it's a motion from Pam, a second from, oh, God, why did I write Pam again? I did that. Kat. That's twice in one night. It's a motion from Kat and a second from Buddy to call for the trustee election. Are there any other comments from the board? All in favor say aye. Aye. And those opposed? And that motion carries. All right, now we need to call for the county to conduct our mail-in election.
I move for the county to conduct the mail-in election.
I know it. So it's a motion from Kat and a second from Pam to have the county conduct the mail-in election. Is there any questions from the audience on that? I'm going to have you come to the mic. I'm sorry. Have they always accepted mail-in ballots? Yeah.
In Yellowstone County, for us to do an election that's not mail-in ballot, then we have to take on the cost, the school district would have to take on that cost of doing the election. Whereas if we do a mail-in, then the county takes on the cost of doing the election.
Okay. Are there any questions or comments from the board? All in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? And that motion carries. All right. More activity accounts.
I move that we approve activity accounts for the high school theater, band, and choir.
Just a small clarification.
Let me do this. I know what you're saying. But let me just get this down. Now, go ahead and do the clarification.
The band and choir are not exclusive for the high school. The band and choir are just being separated because we now have a band teacher and a choir teacher. So they're 6 through 12, or 10 still at this point, but they're going to be doing their own. So Mr. Staten will be doing fundraising only for choir and not having it go into the same fund as the band funds. Does that make sense?
Does your motion still work for that? Yep. Okay. Okay. All right. Is there any questions from the audience on this? All right. Any questions, comments from the board? All in favor say aye. Aye. And those opposed? And that motion carries. All right. Negotiations. So right now, we tentatively have this scheduled for next Tuesday at 6 PM, so we just need the board to approve that. And I think the teachers have already are on board with that.
Move to set the initial negotiation meetings for Tuesday, February 16th at 6 PM.
So we have a motion from Sylvia and a second from Pam to set the initial negotiations meeting for Tuesday at 6 PM. Any questions on that, comments from? It is, but if you show up, it's, yep.
But yes, the more the merrier. It's a wonderful process. You'll love it.
So, yeah. So it's, for me, it's a set in a circle thing. Works great. Very anti to my personality, worked great, and it's fantastic, and it's been probably one of the best things we've done in years, so. Any other comments or questions from the board on that? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed? And I think our actual, well, it doesn't matter, he shows up. So it's Sylvia, myself, and Pam are the main negotiators, but it doesn't work that way, so. And the superintendent's contract. So we did our evaluation last week. Yeah, it's a weekly thing. And this is just to extend Tobin's contract for another year. So.
This will keep them on until we graduate our first seniors.
All right, so we have a motion from Buddy and a second from Sylvia to extend the superintendent's contract through 2024. Is there any comments from the audience?
Dear Lockwood School Board, in light of the current situation, Lockwood School is in due to COVID-19 pandemic. We as parents and the community members are respectfully requesting that the Lockwood School Board table the vote for the renewal of Superintendent Tobin Navazio's contract beyond 2023. There have been numerous inconsistencies with Mr. Navazio's communication with parents and community during this last year. He has presented many challenges for parents. We want to see and mark improvements in Mr. Navazio's relationship with the Lockwood community and communications with parents of Lockwood School students. Thank you for your thoughts and consideration for your requests. I do have some names of parents, which is Jamie Fondrick, parent of 4, Shannon Long, parent of 3, parent of 2, Brian Fondrick, parent of 4, Mike Baller, who's a community member, Bryn Millard, parent of 2, Trenton Schultz, parent of 2, Jesse McAllis, parent of 2, Jared Seymour, parent of 2, Jatan Ailes, community member, Misty Harris, parent of 2, Brandon Kane, parent of 2, Luke Zahn, parent of 2, Megan Mazel, parent of 3, Sherry Grenny, parent of 1, Charity Bowler, community member, Zach Long, parent of 2, Tanya Schultz, parent of 2, Chelsea Seymour, parent of 2, Tyler Millard, parent of 2, Jennifer McAllis, parent of 2, Mandy Albertson, parent of 1, Samantha Zahn, parent of 1, Heidi Crane, parent of 2, Angela Trout, parent of 3, Lana Long, community member, Danielle Olson, I think parent of 2, Danielle Turner, parent of 1. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any other comments? Any comments, questions from the board? All right, hearing none, the motion is from Buddy and the second from Sylvia to extend superintendent's contract through 2024. All in favor, say aye. Aye. And those opposed? And that motion carries.
I'd like to discuss sitting down and talking about the language in the contract for Tobin, if we can set a committee to meet and rework some of the language in the contract.
We can do that. Who would want to be on that committee? I think we can do that here.
Just working over some of the language in the contract that needs to be updated.
All right, so it's Sylvia, Pam, and Kat as a committee to go over his contract. And that'll be on a later.
Can we meet with Tobin for this?
Yeah.
No? Yeah, Lori needs to be. Yeah.
Yeah. I'll let you guys work that out. All right. Buddy, continue.
I second.
So a motion from Buddy, second from Pam to adjourn. All in favor, say aye. Aye. And those opposed? And that motion carries. We are adjourned.